जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यमुनातीरावनचारी। यमुनातीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यमुनातीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद् हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस AC भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, Text 37. Aho asadhav anutishtham yad abhivineshito aham indriyer avidya rachita vishama Shayandhakupe tadalam alam amushya vanitaya vinodamrigam mam dhigiti garhayam chakara. What? Aho, alas, asadhu, not good, anushtitam, executed, yet, because, abhiniveshitaha, being completely absorbed, aham, I, indriyai, for sense gratification, avidya, by nescience, rachita, made, vishama, causing distress, vishaya, sense gratification, andhakupe, in the dark well, tat. Wow. Can we try to be in unison? Tat, that. Alam, insignificant. Alam, of no importance. Amushyaha, of that Vanitayaha, wife. Vinodamragam, just like a dancing monkey. Mam, unto me. Dhik, all condemnation. Dhik, all condemnation. Iti, thus. Garhayam, criticism. Chakara, he did. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It's a fantastic verse. The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy anymore. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned. Purport. How condemned is the advancement of material knowledge can be understood from the behavior of Maharaj Priyavrata. He performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun which shined during the night, and creating a chariot so great that its wheels formed vast oceans. These activities are so great that modern scientists cannot even imagine how such things can be done. Maharaj Priyavrata acted very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing in sense gratification, ruling his kingdom and dancing to the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. When we think about this example of Maharaj Priyavrata, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization of materialistic advancement. Modern so-called scientists and other materialists are very satisfied because they can construct great bridges, roads, and machines. But such activities are nothing comparable to those of Maharaja Priyavrata's. If Maharaj Priyavrata could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities, how condemned we are in our so-called advancement of materialist civilization. We can conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of the living entity entangled within this material world. Unfortunately, modern man does not understand his entanglement and how condemned he is, nor does he know what kind of body he is going to have in the next life. From a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. Maharaj Priyavrata had served the great sage Narada sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulences, he could not be deviated from his own task. He again became Krishna conscious. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Neha Bhikrama Nashosti Pratyavayo na Vidyate Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. In devotional service, there is no loss or diminution, and even a small service rendered in devotional service is sufficient to save one from the greatest danger. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 40. Such renunciation as Maharaja Priyavrata's is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, when people are powerful, or when they have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home, and material popularity, they become more and more entangled. Maharaj Priyavrata Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narada, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shavasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. There are many points to this verse. I will only focus on one particular practical piece of it. The role of regret. So in the story, Maharaj Priyavrata is regretting his, way of life. And it is described here that his regret, he's condemning himself. He says, dhik, dhik. And the verse starts with aho. Aho means alas. So there's a recognition of something wrong that he has done. His recognition is that he digressed or deviated or got distracted from the course of self-realization. Another element of his condemnation is that he got distracted from the service that he was supposed to do. Another element of that condemnation is that within the service, the facilities that he got, he misused them. That's how he's feeling. One of the facilities was a beautiful wife. Actually, he had 2 wives. And he got very, very enamored by them. And he says, I was vanitayaha vinoda mrigam. Vinoda means pleasure. And mrigam means animal. So people keep little pets for feeling happy. Okay, they feed their little bird or they feed their little pet. I guess in America, of course this is in India, it's a little unknown. But in America, people have hamsters, turtles, even a snake as a pet. This is unknown. Coming from India, it's like, wow, you guys are really bizarre. Oh, I think the one that really threw me off the cliff was, what's that called? Not only pet tarantula, but the other one. No, it looks like a lizard and has a long tail. Huh? See that? My gosh. Iguana. Wow. A pet iguana. Anyway. But people have. And these are all called Vinoda Mrigam. Sometimes husbands are also Vinoda Mrigam in this case. The wives derive great pleasure by telling him, do this. And he does that. Sit here. And he sits here. By this way, the household is very happy. Because he likes to be henpecked and she loves to peck him completely. This is the happiness in householder life. No, this is Vinoda Mrigam. So he is condemning himself. My gosh. I'm not saying the husband should not listen to their wives. For the stability of a household, always listen. I was here, this is a little modified. This is from marketing, but we'll apply it to householder life. There are 2 rules. Okay, and we should always follow these rules. In Nectar of Devotion also there are 2 rules. Do you remember what those are? Very fantastic. In householder life there are 2 rules. First one, the wife is always correct. Rule number 2, in case she is wrong, refer to rule number 1. Okay? She's always right. Don't mess with that. Better not to bring about voluntary distress in one's life. Tapasya we must take, not this kind of tapasya. So anyway, he's condemning himself for being distracted in his devotional life. So I'm going to focus mainly on this, and I'm not on the other points here. It is very important that as practicing devotees, one of the very, very important things to do is to be inward looking, or what is called introspective. And it's described in the Bhagavad Gita, the introspective sage. Why is Krishna referring to introspective sage? Because an introspective sage separates himself from the rest of the crowd. Or like we say, it separates the men from the boys. Because the regulative principles of devotional service, literally everyone follows. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Everyone follows. It is the introspective person who actually extracts nectar from it. Said differently. Many times we perform our bhakti and we notice that it is fairly mechanical. We just follow the motions of doing things. We wake up, we show up at Mangalarti, we chant our japa, we are there at Guru Puja, we sit through class, and we do every day. But still, sometimes we feel something's missing. It's like having a wonderful preparation. All the vegetables are there, the spices are there, it's perfectly cooked. The salt is missing. So this missing, something's missing, is an indicator that perhaps we are going through our sadhana in a very mechanical sort of way. The element of bringing rasa, or taste, is, of course, executing with feelings. One of the aspects of that, is being introspective. Introspective means looking within to consider, where is it that I can improve? Among the things that I have done or said or rendered my services, can I improve in those? And the improvement is not just the physical, skillful aspect of things, but the improvement is in the quality of consciousness. And a person who thinks carefully through these things becomes a very joyful person, because they extract nectar. So we might think, how should I become introspective? Should I just think 5 minutes in a day? There are different ways of doing it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that when we end our day, we should reflect. During my day, were there things that I could have done differently? Were there things that I could have done better? Could I have spoken better? Could I have responded to certain situations differently in a more Krishna conscious manner? And make a commitment from tomorrow, when I'm put in the same situations, which, by the way, Krishna puts us in the same situation again and again. And when I'm put in those situations, Krishna is giving me an opportunity to fulfill my, sankalpa or determination to improve. Another way is, Rupa Goswami has given us in Nectar of Instruction, the first 3 verses, a list of 18 things to think about. And we can consider, how are we doing on these 18 things? Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, Janasanga, Laulyam, Utsaha, Nishchaya, Dhairya. There's a whole 18 things. It's a little, in marketing we call it dashboard or scorecard. Very quickly know how things are going if you look at the scorecard. This is our scorecard. How are we doing on these 18 things? 6 of which are important to control or tolerate, 6 of which are feeding our bhakti, and 6 which kill our bhakti. This is our scorecard. This is how we become introspective. And the second element to this is our process is a very merciful process. It is definitely strict, meaning there are consequences for becoming distracted or deviated. What is the consequence? Illusion, forgetfulness of Krishna, or giving value to material pursuit more than it is necessary. In fact, material pursuit doesn't have necessary value. But when we start thinking of that as valuable, that's the consequence of having forgotten Krishna or becoming deviated. These are indicators. Just as a person who's suffering from a disease manifests symptoms. And by symptoms, we can tell, oh, there's a disease. So like this, attraction to material energy is a symptom. Here the word is abhivineshataha, absorption in matter. When our absorption in matter increases, that is when the fever has crossed normal temperature. 98.6 is normal, 100 is abnormal, 105 is very high temperature, 107, bye-bye, finish. As we become more absorbed in matter, the material disease increases. So while there are consequences for being distracted, deviated, whatever we want to call it, our process is what we call self-correcting or very merciful. We become situated right back where we left off, simply by this element of what is called regret. These two things are very important. Just as gratitude impels our bhakti, regret keeps us on course. It's a protection, actually. A devotee who is regularly regretful. Why do we keep regretting? Because we have a tendency to deviate. It's like a car whose wheels are not balanced. The moment you leave the steering wheel, it goes off-road. So we are not balanced, mentally imbalanced. Our imbalance takes us back to things that are detrimental to our own happiness. Even Maharaj Priyavrata is showing us how that is done. He's saying, aho, alas, and dik, I'm condemned, what have I done? That regret is a very, very helpful correcting factor that brings us back right on course. So one must regularly, every day, regret for the deviations that have happened during the course of the day. Now, our regret should not be like the examples Srila Prabhupada gives in the Nectar of Instruction. This regret has two elements. One is called prayashchitta. Prayashchitta means correcting. Actually, prayashchitta means trying to avoid the consequences of the wrong that has been done. This is called prayashchitta. Oh, I realized I made a mistake. For example, when we break a traffic law or something, then our prayashchitta is we are fined. But the tendency to break the law doesn't go away. There's a deeper level of regret. That level of regret is to re-establish ourselves in our relationship with Krishna as a servant. That regret is genuine. Different language used in Nectar of Instruction says awakening our dormant Krishna consciousness. So while we regret, and that's important, our regret should not be that we continue doing the same things and keep coming back and saying sorry for the same things. That's an indication that we're not learning. Right? Genuine mistakes can happen. Our process doesn't say, once you take up bhakti, you can never make a mistake. It doesn't say like that. Because we are conditioned, mistake is something that is part of being in sadhana bhakti. The word practice, right? Within the word practice is the room for making a mistake. Otherwise, we would have called it perfection right from the beginning. But the word practice means the tendency to make mistakes is there. And that's all right. That's all right means it's not that we become careless. That's all right means our regret is necessary to reinstate ourselves again. It is by that where this neha bikramanasho asti verse becomes useful. That we don't lose our bhakti credits. But unless we are genuinely regretful, we don't become re-established in bhakti either. So in this case, in this purport, Prabhupada gives us what are possible distractors. Here he says, a beautiful house, a great kingdom, a beautiful wife, or a good-looking husband, wonderful material activities, etc. Dhanam, janam, sundarim, kavitam, jagadisha kama, etc. And so one very easily moves from or moves away from the real purpose. One begins to value the products of bhakti. Sometimes these come. Labha, puja, pratishta. These come. Labha means material benefit or even spiritual benefit. Puja means honor by others. And pratishta means a very exalted position, recognition within the society of devotees. And these things are also detrimental when one thinks of them more valuable than the goal of achieving Krishna. These distractors, in one way, help keep the process of bhakti pure. Correct? Because bhakti is such a purifying process, if our consciousness has material contamination, then these are the things by which we are removed. At the same time, bhakti itself is purifying. So we need to reorient ourselves to the goal again and again. What is it that's at stake? By my acting in this way, what is it that's at stake? What is at stake is there is a curtain or a veneer that manifests between us and Krishna. And because of that veneer, we cannot access our relationship with Krishna. And it's that we are stimulating that veneer to manifest. It is because we are tatashta Shakti, what we call marginal potency, we, depending upon the orientation of our consciousness, we make that curtain drop or rise. Of course, it is Krishna's mercy, but that's how Krishna reciprocates with our consciousness, our disposition of heart. And then he says, there are generally, when people are powerful or when they have a beautiful wife, beautiful home, etc., they become more and more entangled. Priyavrata Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narada, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. So this is the saving grace. The saving grace, when we say descending mercy seems abstract. The tangible experience of descending mercy is what training we've received. And how we utilize, we bring about the value of that training at that moment manifests mercy in our lives. There are many situations where such training has helped. The descending mercy, Krishna appears either directly to remind us, indirectly through his devotees, indirectly through here the training by great sage Narada, something that we have been trained in, we remember, etc. Or the holy name, of course. So here, Priyavrata Maharaj, as his life was progressing, suddenly took stock of what's going on. And that was sufficient to awaken for him the correcting element to put him back on track. In Ajamila's case, it took longer. The Yamadutas had come and they had removed his subtle body almost from his gross body. And he started calling out to his son, Narayana. It is described by our acharyas. It's at that moment that Lord Narayana helped him by dint of calling out the holy name. There are other places where a person has forgotten and he had to be reminded by personal instructions, like Arjuna's case. Arjuna forgot, became bewildered. So Krishna personally gave him instructions to remove that cloud. In the case of Yamunacharya, it had to be done in a very different way. Yamunacharya, as a young boy of 12 years of age, had defeated the greatest scholar that existed in the kingdom. And part of the prize money for winning that debate was half the kingdom. And he became such a fantastic king at such a young age, and he was a good one too, that in the course of his life, he forgot all of his Krishna consciousness. His grandfather or great-grandfather, Natamuni, was very much worried about his grandson or great-grandson. I forget the exact relationship. I think it was grandson, maybe great-grandson, whatever, but the idea is. So he sent his personal servant, you please go and somehow bring him back. His name was Rama Mishra. When Rama Mishra was a simple Vaishnav, he has no access to the king. So he considered, how can I get access to Yamunacharya so I can remind him of his great responsibility, not only for himself, but for the rest of the Vaishnava community. So he brought a special spinach and went to the kitchen and gave it to the head cook. You please make this spinach preparation for the king. I know the king will like it because it's very tasty. So when he made this spinach preparation, the king took special notice. He said, very nice preparation. And every day, Rama Mishra would come and supply spinach to the cook. So every day the king got to eat that spinach preparation. This went on for a whole year. And one fine day, he stopped supplying spinach. So the cook didn't care. They just made whatever other things for the king. And the plate came to the king, and the king noticed, where's that spinach preparation? I really like this. I've gotten used to it. Why didn't you make that spinach preparation? Call the cook. Hey, what happened? Why didn't you make this spinach? He said, today the supplier didn't come. He said, who's this person who's been supplying you for a whole year? I want to see him. So that was his access to the king. And as soon as he came in front of Yamunacharya, Rama Mishra reminded him that your grandfather, Natamuni, is very worried about you. Looking at your opulence and how you're conducting yourself, this is condemnable. What are you doing? You have greater responsibility. You're a king and all that, that's fine. But you have a responsibility as a Vaishnava. Please. And immediately Yamunacharya left the kingdom and walked away and became Yamunacharya. Meaning he revived the whole Sri Vaishnavism back to its glory. Simply by that instruction. That was the regret for him. What am I doing? So this is very important. It's very healthy, that correctional attitude. Either on our own or by dint of, someone's reminder, either Krishna or Vaishnava or Shastra, however, that reminder, it's very important. It puts us back on course. because we have a tendency to get off course. And here is saying such renunciation is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that grace manifests in different ways. And our way to access that grace in situations like this is our regret, our genuine regret. This is our asset. Just as important as gratitude, as important is regret. It's a fantastic asset to keep ourselves on course in bhakti. So any questions, comments you would like to add? Any experience of regret that we have this realization of how we've been back on course? Jai Jagannath Prabhu.
Sometimes one feels regretful about something that can't be corrected or may not be able to be corrected right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of tends to plunge you into a deeper feeling of remorse, and kind of tends to go ignorant after some time. So how do we practice this quality of regret in a circumstance that may not be able to be corrected or immediately dealt with?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for massaging it. There are two kinds of regret. One regret we're all too familiar with. Oh, I'm so bad, I'm so terrible, I quit Krishna consciousness, I'm walking out. This we're very familiar with. This is like our second nature. This regret is the regret in the mode of ignorance. Anything that makes us go away from Krishna further is more detrimental. So our regret is actually hurting us. There is the other way of regretting, the actual regret, the transcendental, if you will. How do I know that I'm regretting the right way? Very simple. If from our regret, our enthusiasm, our determination grow, our enthusiasm for bhakti, our determination to become pure grow, that's the right way of regretting. If by our regret, our determination and enthusiasm becomes weak, then it's the influence of the mode of ignorance. Now when we regret, the natural step from regret is called rectification. Like it is said that there is, usually correction means there is the 4R step. I think His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj had mentioned this. Regret, first is recognition. I mean, we don't know what to regret for if we don't even recognize what we've done wrong. Right? So first is recognition. Second is actually being regretful. Actually being regretful is not sufficient to say, I'm sorry. Regret must be specific. What am I sorry for? What we really have to be sorry for is the lapse in consciousness. From regret, the third is rectification. So what? What are we going to do about it? Unless we rectify, the regret is not complete. And from rectification comes what's called reinstatement. Rectification and back on track. Reinstatement. So some things we cannot rectify because they've already happened in time and we have no capacity to go back in time. So the rectification in those cases is internal. That I've learned a deeper lesson from this. That in the case, in my life, if I face one more situation like this, I pray to Krishna, please let me respond this way. In the case of others that I'm working with, I can share my experience of how sometimes some things are so irreversible and we lose out on great opportunities. Happens. I can think of a few things that I missed out on and I cannot correct them. Really. I mean, they were so silly. I wish I hadn't done those things. But, so am I now more alert to that? I'm hoping. Right? Then my regret is genuine, or at least strong enough. Sometimes we also find that our regret is genuine, but our tendency isn't going away. That's an indicator of weakness, that we don't have enough Shakti. We have the best intention, but not enough muscle power or enough gun power to overcome it. The correcting factor is determination, to become more determined. And whatever it takes to become more determined, one must do. For different people, it's different things. But that determination feeds our strength. Someone will ask, how to become more determined? Sister once said that when one becomes austere, one becomes more determined. The austerity is a knowingly, voluntarily removing ourselves from situations that put us back in the same old patterns of things. This much we all recognize. There are certain flags and warning signs that go out for each one of us when we are in certain circumstances, right? Yeah. We recognize what those warning signs are. But when we don't pay attention to those warning signs, that's when our strength becomes our weakness, or we lose our strength. So to pay heed to those warning signs, early warning signs, is very, very helpful. Okay. Bhaktalok.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So you were explaining this 4-part process that begins with recognition. I was wondering if you could share a little bit on this part of the process. I find sometimes maybe I'll recognize there could have been some improvement in my activities or my interaction, but then the tendency will be to minimize it or make excuses or something like this. And then other times, there will be hardly any recognition at all on my part. So could you share something?
Yeah. We have a tendency to forget the goal of life. Or said differently, the goal of life doesn't sufficiently descend into the heart to be clear. Why am I doing what I'm doing? So then things that such of these we don't pay too much attention to because we don't recognize, hey, if I don't correct this, I might lose the goal at the time of death. And sometimes, most of the times, we don't see, we don't recognize. That's because we have blinders on. Therefore, it is said that one must execute bhakti in the association of devotees, not lonely somewhere or aloof or removed ourselves from the because without association we cannot recognize what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong. Correct? We might create our own shloka and recite something. It sounds fantastic. That might be totally apasampradaya. Only in the association of devotees they will make a face like this. Oh, I shouldn't have said like that. That's our correcting factor. Yeah. 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 The other day he was giving the example, the Vaishnavas, make grimace, then I'll know something's wrong. So there's a woman performing bhakti deep in the forest by herself. Krishna and Arjuna go in disguise. Krishna wants Arjuna to see. So when she sees these two, she receives them very nicely, and Arjuna says, wow, what a wonderful devotee. And Krishna says, So then he asks her, oh, Mata, You're a nice, gentle lady. You're living, eating fruits and roots and berries. What are these 3 swords on the wall? She says, these are for special persons. I guess the order I forget. I see the first one, she says, one of them is for Arjuna. Why for Arjuna? Yeah, how dare he make my Lord his chariot driver. So if I see him, I'm going to cut his head off. The second sword is for Mother Yashoda, and the third is for Draupadi or someone, right? Yeah, for Mother Yashoda. She ran after him with a stick and bind him to a grinding mortar. How dare is that's child abuse. I cannot tolerate this. And Draupadi, something, she made him come and give her so much sari. This is not okay. She should be serving Krishna. Why did she invite Krishna to serve her? And when Arjuna heard that, it's like, what? What kind of devotee is this? So he was explaining that bhakti must be performed in association so that the blinders may go away. Otherwise we'll be happily going, whoa, what a devotee, very nice, I'm doing so well. And right off the cliff. What's that saying? The road to hell is paved with good intention. We wouldn't know unless we're with Vaishnavas. So it's important. Someone else? Oh, Acharya Nishta Prabhu. And then Ashraya Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. I just have a question. Is it wrong to think one is doing okay on the path of devotional service?
No. It's not wrong to think that one is doing okay. Devotees are not morbid, pessimistic Prabhus. It is good to think, I'm doing okay. But I'm doing okay should impel, I need to do better. Otherwise, it's the tendency to become complacent. I'm doing okay. I don't need to really change anything. Everything is fine. It should impel improvement. There's always room for improvement. That's feeling okay is a good thing. If someone is feeling healthy, to say I'm feeling healthy is not a bad thing. But we can always feel better health, even more improved.
I was just thinking when you were saying that also, and maybe seeing on what account we're doing okay, right? Seeing
Correct.
How the mercy is, the only reason we're doing okay is through that mercy.
So it's good to recognize that mercy is descending in my life. Acknowledging it is good. But we may be doing good in one department. We may not be doing good in another department. Maybe in Vachovegam we may be pretty good. Something else we may not be good. Usually Vachovegam is the problem. Other departments may be all right. Ashraya Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
This is something I was going to say, but after he asked this question, I was thinking we should also be thinking we're doing okay by Krishna's mercy. That's like the reality, right?
That's what he said.
That's the end of what you were saying. Okay.
That's what he said. It's good to recognize that if I'm doing well, it's because of mercy. Otherwise, how can I do well? And I said, yes, it's important to acknowledge descending mercy. That acknowledgement keeps the door for further mercy to descend. But the moment we think, I'm doing good by my own strength, the door closes. And the next minute we're struggling. What happened?
We're still thinking we're doing well.
But that's even worse.
I was thinking, because in this situation, Maharaj Priyavrata was following instructions and everything, and it's not like he did something purposely wrong. So the last verse was talking about, how an immature devotee may still fall down, and then discussion about the modes of nature are ruling all of us anyway. And a couple of things I thought of. One is that he's not blaming the circumstances.
Right.
He's not thinking, they made me do this, and something. He's just I want to go back to follow, Krishna consciousness. That was his concern. And and then another thing that I thought of was that because of reading Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, where Krishna says, by full conviction, one should, by intelligence which is sustained by full conviction, one should control the mind and then bring it back to where it's supposed to be focused. So we have to sometimes just go to whatever that thing is that we really have confidence in, because a lot of times all these other angles of stuff that are telling us the right message, we just can't connect to that thing. So, whether it's just like I want to really be able to chant nicely the holy name, or I really want to have a relationship with that devotee, or, whatever the thing is that really, is like, that's what I want out of Krishna consciousness, even if I can't understand all the other stuff right now, it really can help, even in like the darkest times. Because like with him, he had this relationship with Narada Muni, he had served him sincerely, so then, that's the thing that I can connect to, even in the midst of like this cloud of, material situation. So all of us have, if we've been practicing, trying to do something sincerely, we have something that we've really connected with on a deeper level, we can say. And that can really help us a lot. When we can't understand why we should take heed of all the other things that we may be arguing with or whatever in Krishna consciousness.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
Sometimes we may be doing everything that's right, meaning we may be very sincere, genuinely trying things, working hard, sincerely, but we may be solving the wrong problem. So unless we recognize where the issue is, all of our assets may not be fully utilized. So it's important to recognize where's the problem. For example, Vyasadeva, right? Like that's the prime example. Of course, he is not having a trouble or anything. Vyasadeva did everything that was perfect. I mean, there's no one who can emulate or do things that Vyasadeva did. Everything was perfect. In fact, he says, Amoga Drik, Shruti, you're fixed in the Vedic truth, you're fixed in truth, your vision is clear, everything else. But Narada Muni had to point out, here's the problem. Until then, it was unclear what's wrong. So we may be doing everything really well, but we may be not solving the problem. We may not even recognize where the problem is. Sometimes that's the issue. And it may be a little adjustment, and boom, everything goes well. So, continue, please. Oh, that's it? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I regret if I said something that was not proper. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. What time do you have to go to school?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Do you want to talk to Drew and I?